Hi everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel Sports Talk at Calle Serrano. Tonight we will talk about eSports, more specifically the world of eSports and in its legal implications. Last week we had the pleasure to host Reyes Belver, Sara Messina and Idalinda Reitano, and we talk about the development of women football. While tonight we have the pleasure of having four experts of the esports industry. Experts like Domenico Filosa, who is an Italian lawyer, Fabio Lacivita, who is also an Italian lawyer with a specialization in the esports industry, Nicoletta Serrao, and Luca Viola. We will talk about esports and its legal implication, and we will touch a lot of topics such as the development of this industry, the sponsorship, the gaming, the differences between sports and esports. And I will start with Domenico Filosa, and I will ask him 2 or 3 questions, and we will have the pleasure to listen to him. And I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of interesting things to hear about esports. So Domenico, we all know that esports are increasing a lot. This phenomenon is getting bigger and bigger, especially in the last 2-3 years. And also in this last period, because of COVID-19, everyone is talking about esports. The interest is getting bigger and bigger. And can you tell us something more about the business of the esports and this phenomenon in general?
Yes, thank you, Lucia, for the question. Hello, everyone. My name is Domenico Filosa. I'm a lawyer specializing in sports law. First, I'm based in Turin, and I currently work for a law firm that is called Athena, an Italian law firm focused on international law. So I am experienced in football law, anti-doping proceedings, and esports. And in particular, as per esports, I'm a member of IAS, the Italian Association of Sports Lawyers. In this association, I'm the head of the national working group about esports. So I'm trying to make a long story short. Video games are not all the same. There is an important difference between gaming and esports. Every video game is part, of course, of gaming, but you can define esports only those video games that you can play, play in a competitive way, making possible a professional competition between teams or between single players. Only for that reason, some video games can be considered in sports and some not. No matter if you play them alone or in a team, and no matter that it's so important if the video game is sports related or not sports related. If the object of the video game is a sporting activity like football, baseball, or car races, is of course sports related. But the kind of game seems to be important for the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. And now I'm going to explain what I mean. The IOC, as you know, is a non-governative organization based in Lausanne, who is the unique responsible for the organization of the Olympic Games. For that reason, the Olympic program is not always the same. It changes from time to time. Sporting activities that was admitted in Atlanta 1996, for example, are very different, are strongly different from sporting activities that will be admitted to Tokyo 2020. For example, in Tokyo 2020, 2021, there will be introduced sporting climbing, karate, surfing, and skateboarding. And some sporting activity come back to the Olympic program, like baseball and softball. So, in the past years, the International Olympic Committee has shown a big support towards esports. In particular, let's step back to the 28th of October of 2017. On that date, now I read the part of the resolution. On this day, in this occasion, there was a very important thing. For the very first time, the IOC suggested the possibility to include video games in the Olympic program and adopted an open-mind approach. The IOC clarified through an official statement that competitive esports can be considered a sporting activity that the player involved and play and prepare and train with an intensity that can be compared to traditional sports athletes. In another section of this statement entitled "The Development of Esports," the same IOC summarized its consideration regarding esports. The summit agreed that esports are showing strong growth, especially within the youth demographics across different countries, and can provide a platform for engagement with the Olympic movement. In order to be recognized by the IOC as a sport, the content of esports must not infringe on the Olympic values. A further requirement for recognition by the IOC must be the existence of an organization guaranteeing compliance with the rules and regulations of the Olympic movement, like anti-doping, betting, and manipulations. So, in consideration of all this stuff, the summit asked the IOC to explore this area together with the gaming industry and players to come back the Olympic movement stakeholders. That position of IOC also inspired some football clubs like Barcelona, who had clarified that they will not spend any other money on esports outside of sports-related video games.
Great, Domenico. I'm Your starting topic was very interesting for me, in my opinion. And I have to tell you, I remember once we had a conversation. We talked. We speak very often about esports and about sports law in general. But I specifically remember one day when you told me that, in your opinion, sports law is strictly related to the entertainment law. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Do I
is it?
remember well? Can you tell us more in details what you mean?
Is it? Thank you, Lucio, for the question. To answer your question, I'm going to focus on the current diffusion of esports, and in particular on the current diffusion in Italy. The esports market is growing, is getting bigger and bigger, and numbers don't lie. On the web, you can find a lot of reports that can testify the exponential rise of the movement. But what is now important to underline is that, firstly, there is a strong fan base, which has been growing faster and faster in the last months. Secondly, there is a rise of interest on the part of media. Above all, is now evident the interest of the national and international sports institution in the organization of the tournaments in Europe and also in Italy. So everyone knows that video games world is directly linked to entertainment. But let's go to an history to a focus about the history of esports. Firstly, in 80s, fan met to in the so-called LAN parties that were some offline competition held in huge pavilions with computers, with a huge screen in the middle, which broadcasted the video games. Then, in the 90s, in the late 90s, video games began to exit from these pavilions and enter in the first arenas and the first stadiums, bigger and bigger. Nowadays, the scenario is very different because of the internet and, of course, of live streaming. Internet brought everything to light. Today, a user from all over the world can assist to any competition, to any tournament, to any stream, just because of the internet, using simply a free account on YouTube, on Twitch, on Mixer, on Facebook Gaming. For example, let's talk about Twitch. This online platform that was born, as you know, in 2011, and only 3 years later was bought by Amazon for the record sum of $970 million. In a short time, Twitch has become the most important meeting point, the most important agora for one of the busiest and most popular online platform in the world. To get an idea of what happens daily, keep in mind that every day thousands and thousands of videos are uploaded on this platform, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Mixer, and on Facebook Gaming. For that reason, a lot of leagues have already signed broadcasting agreements with the new giants of the internet streaming. So what is happening online is happening also on the TV, but in this case, video is not killing the video games, according to the buggers. Esports is a reality. And on 2020, because of the forced quarantine against the COVID, the TV started to show more and more sports competition, esports competition. A lot of sports channels are now full of people playing esports and sports-related video games. So it's important to underline that the current situation forced the billions of people all around the world to stay at home, to stay on TV. The situation has accelerated the spread of esports on mass media, bringing them closer and closer to the great audience. As you know, in Europe, there are five nations that are called the Big Five: England, Spain, Italy, Germany, and France. And these countries currently organize official esports tournaments. For example, in Italy, there is the new E-Serie A team, where team stands for Telecom Italia Mobile, a little advertise, and is the first broadcasting company of the country. This tournament is played both on FIFA and PES. As you know, FIFA is the game created by EA Sports that has an exclusive agreement with the Serie A league. And while PES is the other game connected to football, and it's created by Konami. PES has an exclusive agreement with Juventus. But there is more to say. The Italian Football Federation, for example, FIGC, has also completed the selection of the national team. And at the same time, you know, FIFA and UEFA have already scheduled in the next editions of the World Cup and the Euro Cup. But we are still talking about sports-related video games. Sports-related video games. In the future, things may change. For example, let's think about the Griezmann, the dance made about Antoine Griezmann, who after each goal scores plays the Ludo dance, a dance inspired by Fortnite. Every day in this video game, there are some music concerts live, and they attract a lot of people and also the in-game sponsorships. It's only an example, but there is a huge world to explore. So electronic sports are a part of our society. Also in Italy, a big role is played by Double Idea, that is the old AESB, that is the Italian Interactive Digital Entertainment Association. And on its last report, Double Idea shows that almost one fan of two claims that esports allows everyone to play a game on equal terms and without any discrimination of ethnicity, or creed. So it's crystal clear that esports is very important. It's a very important opportunity to make business and to speak with new population of young fans. So the role of esports cannot be ignored.
Great, great, great. You told us a lot of interesting things, and I'm learning a lot from you in this talk.
Thank you.
And I have another question for you, actually. I heard that the doping, who is affecting so much the real sport, is becoming unfortunately popular, even if it's a word that I wouldn't like to use. Also in esports. So, can you tell us how this phenomenon is taking place in the esports field?
Yeah, true story. Do not believe that nobody uses illicit methods to video play. It's not true, unfortunately. In fact, nowadays a lot of gamers have publicly said that they have been using doping just before or during the tournaments, in particular smart drugs. Now, I'm not letting the cat out of the bag. Even if only apparently a video game not require a real physical effort, actually, pro gamers have to use some different skills, some mental skills, like coordination, memorization of tactics, um, quick reflexes, concentration, resistance to the stress, just to name a few of them. In short, we on the market you can already find a lot of very dangerous substances which are able to improve your performance, stimulating brain and through neural enhancement. These drugs, the smart drugs, are really dangerous for the health and could lead to respiratory and health problems, and of course to death. So, under smart drugs, a young player can face several hours of playing without accusing any drop of attention. Well, promoting prevention, awareness, and of course, control anti-doping test is fundamental in the fight against doping, especially against smart drugs that they are often used to without any limitation or controls. This is the biggest problem. There is a big lack of any formal recognition by the institution, and this situation makes the fight against doping really difficult to win. For that reason, consider that the WADA and the World Anti-Doping Agency and the WADA code isn't generically applicable to electronic sports. On the top of that, the practical ways in which the controls are carried out during the tournaments are not the most reliable one. Of course, we have the anti-doping that is made by cheek swab, the cheek swab. So this test is not effective as the test of blood. So you can easily lead to this test can easily lead to false positive results. For these reasons, a lot of players usually refuse to submit of this test. Its conclusion, a storm in a teacup, and anti-doping tests are made only but only in main important tournaments and not in all the tournaments, in all the events that are organized every year. In short, there isn't an international standard about how to face anti-doping and about how to make tests. If you want to know more about this topic, Patrizia Diaci, my colleague, has recently written a very interesting article about anti-doping and about tests on the latest issue of Giustizia Sportiva. In conclusion, if the IOC decides to include esports to the Olympic Games, the issue of doping will no longer be ignored by the law. In this case, it will be necessary to regulate the world of esports by setting new rules on prevention, on international standards for anti-doping controls. And let's talk about a little about copyright. Um, Also, there are a lot of problems, of legal issues on esports. Copyright is everywhere. When you play a video game, you are not playing a sport, you are using a product, and that product is owned by a publisher, by someone, the publisher who made it. In fact, EA Sports is the owner of the FIFA 20, and Konami is the owner of PES. This does not happen. This thing does not happen with traditional sports because, for example, nobody owns football. So comparing traditional sports to esports is like comparing, in this case, apple to oranges. What is naturally unthinkable elsewhere in esports is the rule. Just consider that while we are playing video games and when you are streaming a content, you are using something that is not yours. So you need to be careful. In conclusion, if the world of esports is becoming more and more present in your life, the law must begin to deal with it. From a legal point of view, in the next few years, all the countries are going to regulate the matter on several levels: labor law, compliance of the contract, of course, advertising, sponsorships, and organization of the tournaments, just to name a few of them. So all the countries in the world will have to work hard to avoid future legal actions. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Domenico. It was very interesting to hear from you and to learn a lot from you. And you gave us a lot of tips, and I'm pretty sure that all our viewers will take advantage of them. And so now we can continue our talk with Fabio Lacivita. I will let him introduce to all of you, and then I will ask him a couple of questions. Let's go, Fabio.
Hello everyone. First of all, I want to thank you, Lucio, because I'm really glad to be here tonight. I am the head of activation for XCD Esports, an Italian esports team, and my core business, what I have to do in the team is to lead the activation after a sponsorship contract. I have studied in a school in Italy. I get my master degree in esports management, and then finally I get to work in what I want to do. My dream comes true.
So your dream was working in this field.
Yeah, I like it very much. I consider myself
So
like
we can say that you were a little bit nerd.
no, I'm totally a nerd. I like esports so much. I like esports so much.
And how did you see this industry increase since you were a kid or a teenager playing with video games, while now we are working in this field? So the approach is totally different. So let's say how can you explain us how the business of esport is structured and how it has increased in the last years since you were a teenager playing all day long video games, and while now you work in this field and you are one of the people who are making that this field is increasing.
Okay, first of all, I never stopped to play video games. The first thing I have to say is this, and let's go. I have to show you, to analyze with you the some data for to understand the global market and why this is so important. This is why esports is so important as a business. Let's talk about numbers. According to the newzoo.com esports market report, this year the esports market revenue will grow to more than $1 billion for the first time, a year-on-year growth of 10%. But the most interesting data is that of this billion, $614 million will come from sponsorship made by endemic and not endemic companies. But the question is why companies like Corsair, Adidas, or Domino's Pizza, for example, spend their money on esport? What is the reason? Well, the answer is simple because globally the esports audience this year will grow to 495 millions of people, and year-on-year growth of 11%, and most of which are people under 30 years old. Exactly the population that is no longer reachable through traditional media because generally they don't watch television anymore, they don't read papers anymore, but they spend a lot of time on social media and streaming platform. And another interesting reason for brands is that esport fans have salary higher than the country average. In fact, according to the analysis conducted by Forbes, eSport fan has an average salary of $70,000 per year, and they are really attracted by esports sponsor products. For example, ESL, one of the most important tournament organizers in the world, talks about the 38% of people that watch a live tournament after that spend money on sponsor products. This is the proof that is very positioning for brand invest money on esports event. But first thing first, when a brand intend to sponsor the esports ecosystem, it can choose to do it sponsoring a game, an event, or a team. Let's talk about the game, for example. There are two popular ways to sponsor it. The first one is called Advert Game, and it is a game made by the sponsor. Like imagine a Coca-Cola puzzle or an M&M's bubble game that the brand use for advertise itself. The second
Mhm.
one is the in-game advertising. The sponsor inserts his logo into the game. Imagine like
Yeah.
a city landscape with some banners in background with a sponsor logo on it. The system is very convenient because all player will see it, and we talk about millions of players. Then we can talk about tournaments, live tournaments, because even the event of the live tournaments helped to grow up the esports market during these years. Since I was a kid, I never seen esports event, big esports event. But when I was 25, 26 years old, I start to see on Twitch, on YouTube, these big events followed by millions of people. Tournaments are very interesting for companies because they are followed by millions of people all over the world. For example, the last League of Legends World Championship finals in Paris was followed live by 15,000 people, and in the same time by 44 millions of people online. This is
Wow.
the exactly
It's
44
a
millions of
huge
people online.
number.
Sorry?
It's a huge number.
It's a really huge
Impressive.
number, and this is one of the reasons because a sponsor loves to spend their money on esports. It's really amazing. Uh, in fact, this is the reason why companies, famous one like Mercedes, Gillette, DHL, have sponsored live tournament. And as I said before, the 38% of people which watch event like this one spend their own money on sponsored products. This is amazing, much more than the 44 millions of people online. This is the real data. But live tournaments in truth are not interesting just for private company, but also for public bodies. For example, here in Europe, we got a stage of the Intel Extreme Master Tournament in Katowice, a Polish city where there's nothing special, but this tournament is able to attract more than 150,000 people every year, generating a big business opportunity even for the whole town. I'm thinking about hotels, restaurants, and many other workers. Then, as I said before, the sponsor can also decide to sponsor a team. And
Yeah,
the truth is that unlike traditional teams, esports one plays a lot of game, not just football, basketball, or volleyball. We got many games like the first person shooter. I'm thinking about Call of Duty, for example, battle royale like Fortnite. We got mobile games. We got the multiplayer online battle arena, was one of the most popular one, like League of Legends, as I said before. The sports simulator like FIFA, fighting game, and many others.
yeah.
So
Let's try to make a top five. Which are the most played video games nowadays?
it depends. It depends. Here in Europe, here in Italy, we can say FIFA.
I
FIFA
can
and
imagine that.
FIFA and then Fortnite, because Fortnite is really popular to the young population from 15 years old to 25 years old. They play a lot for not just them, but it's very popular for them. In truth, FIFA it's popular for everyone, for any age. You know,
Mhm.
it's really it's really popular here in Europe. But for example, in South America, it's much more popular PES.
Oh,
It
really?
Yes, it's depending from the region. Maybe I can say here in Europe we love CS:GO. We love League of Legends. Well, everywhere everyone loves League of Legends in every country and in
I've
every
never played League of Legends. I'm
Dota,
sorry.
in my opinion, and it's an eternal fight. Dota 2, it's even better, and it's the same type of game, but this is another topic. But we got many of this game inside the team. So the first decision that the company has to make is if to sponsor the whole team or just a part of it, because sometimes in fact due company policy the sponsor doesn't want to be approached to a violent game, for example. Let me explain. If the company produce goods for children, it doesn't want to
Mhm.
be approached to worse game. On the contrary, a betting company will be glad to do it because many people bet on esports competition where worse games are played. So this is the first choice for the company. After that, the sponsor have to decide what kind of business opportunity take, because there are many that can be provided by an esports team to reach its community, the fan base. Let's talk about, for example, brand awareness. The sponsor can get visibility of the brand logo on the official team jersey during the online and offline events. It could be the title sponsor. It could use the team or just a part of it, just some players to create promotional content. Another business opportunity is for sure the digital marketing, like sponsor logo over the social media cover and on every single team's social content. The teams can also make some digital content created ad hoc for the sponsor, like web series, for example. And don't forget that into an esport team, there are not only pro players, but also many influencers. So the team can also provide influencer marketing with banner ad in all streaming sessions, sales support through the referral link on during this streaming session, the creation of ad hoc campaigns for promotion of the brand or its products, and
Mhm.
last but not the least, The team can also provide live event creation with the presence of influencer at brand events, or organizing tournaments in sponsor shops, or just through the presence of the brand at sector events in team spaces. I mean, as you can see, there are many business opportunities sponsorizing the sport ecosystem. The brand has just to choose one or more than one.
So yours is an invitation for brands to sponsor esports clubs.
This is my job.
It looks clear. It looks
No,
clear.
just kidding. But no, what I meant is, esport team has many possibility to communicate the sponsor products, or just the logo of the sponsor, much more than the tournament organizer or the game. The game instead. I'm not meant that esport team is better. I meant there are much more possibility. Just this, because, for example, the esports team take parts in tournaments. So in live tournaments, they play the video games, and sometimes, for example, in FIFA, you can put inside the game, like in-game advertising, your own t-shirt, your official t-shirt with your own sponsor. And you can provide some digital marketing, some influencer marketing. A tournament organizer can do it, but not so, not in this way, not like the team, not like the esport team.
Yeah,
And this is
yeah,
my
yeah.
job, by the way.
So, resuming, let's say, what is the main activity of a esport club? What is like the daily work? What are they doing day by day? What is the daily routine for a esports club?
Okay, nice question. I try to be not an insider trader, so I try to briefly explain how
Tell
a
us
team works.
whatever you are allowed to say.
No, just kidding. I try to briefly explain how a team works. We have to imagine to divide it into two parts. The first part is dedicated to competitions, where we got players and coaches who train to participate in tournaments. It's the entertainment branch of the team, thanks to which we be known by people that will become part of our community, our followers. And this is a daily activity. Every day, the players have to train themselves with the coaches, or they must go online on Twitch to show themselves playing to our community. It's a daily activity, and it's also a daily activity. In the other hand, the social media company, the media branch of the team, in which our content are created. We got in this branch of the team, we got graphic designer, video maker, social media manager, and every workers we need to create sponsor content. These two parts, imagine these two parts works together, obviously, to create every time new content for our community, to help players to do their best, and to make the team bigger and bigger. In conclusion, personally, I think team, tournament organizer, and game. I think that esports today is an excellent business opportunity for a brand. Let's think about it. Let's repeat it. There are millions of people watching it. Those people are no longer reachable through traditional media. They earn more than the national average, and they spend money on sponsored products. I think it's outstanding. I think it's completely worth for a company. Thank you, Lucio, and thank you all.
Thank you for your intervention. And now we will go on. We will move to Nicoletta, and she will be the one introducing herself. But I know that she is an expert in the intellectual property field of law. So I guess you are talking about the intellectual property links with esports. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I'm talking about the difference between esports and sport in terms of intellectual property. So thank you, Lucio. Thank you for having me. And I'm Nicoletta Serao. I work at an Italian-Korean law firm based in Milan in a team focusing on interactive entertainment, meaning that my work is related 100% to video game and esport client. And yes, I will be explaining what's the main difference and consequences of this huge difference, according to me, between sports and esports. So, as Domenico already mentioned, a key difference between games played in traditional sport and video games played in esports tournament is the existence of the exclusive intellectual property right of the publisher or the developer of the game itself, which allow the publisher or the developer to exercise a significant degree of control over how their game is used and by whom. Of course, they are able to set the boundaries within which the game should be used. Video games are also quite complex issues for the purpose of intellectual property protection, as the definition of video games is something that most jurisdictions are not very familiar with, and therefore the work is not always, and actually most frequently not, protected as a monistic work, but instead more as a bundle of different rights. And of course, the publisher will have also other intellectual property rights other than copyrights, and this will be, of course, the trademark over its video game and the trademark and its trademark. So the publisher trademark. However, for the purpose of this discussion, we should consider that the video game publisher own or control every intellectual property right that is related to its video game. So all the copyrights and also the video game trademark and its trademark. So our starting point is that the publisher is eventually the only subject which is able to authorize the use of its intellectual property rights. And in fact, whenever a user, so a private user, wants to play a certain video games in its living room, he or she will have to accept some standard license terms, which, however, to put it plainly, will cover only private and non-commercial uses. So whenever a video game is played in front of an audience, which is the very definition of esports, that standard terms won't apply. So what can the industry player do in that case? So if we want to organize a esport tournament, for example, what can he do? He can rely on some other standard terms that the publisher may have related to tournaments. So, but these terms will be very narrow usually, and I mean, possibly the publisher won't have them, and they will limit the work of the tournament organizer a lot. Otherwise, he should have to negotiate a specific agreement related to its tournament with the publisher. So basically, these are the two options. Let's say also that from a video game industry perspective, so basically from a developer and publisher perspective, and I would say publisher's perspective, especially, esports are really interesting because of the reason that Fabio said, and for one, also because they represent a great advertisement tool for the video game. And of course, they also, at this point, they represent a different business, a different industry, so a specific market. However, what we should keep in mind is that when we're watching esports from a publisher perspective, is that while esports numbers are exceptionally interesting, also in terms of kind of viewers and the audience, they still account for a small percentage if they are compared with the video game industry, the global video game industry revenues. More specifically, we are talking about in 2020, the video game industry should amount to a total revenue of 159 billions, and the esports business, it's worth 1.1 billion. That it's amazing and it's growing a lot, but for a video game publisher, this doesn't always mean that the esports will be their very priority. So they could, for example, they could see as a very interesting market to enter in a certain period of time. So they can see this as a prospective business. They might not have at this point figured out their own the way they want to enter the market. So that's not something that is necessarily bad for the industry at large. I mean, because in fact, whenever the publisher won't see esports as its primary interest, or whenever he, for example, he doesn't have the firepower to handle them directly, doesn't have the power fired so far, so maybe he's going to have it in the future, then of course the publisher will be willing to license and to license its right over the product to other industry players. So there is room for others as long as the publisher stay on fence. So for example, and then there is also something else. I mean, not every publisher is approaching the esports business in the same way. What I mean is that there are some publishers that are very interested in the esports business might have different view on the future of esports. For example, there are publishers such as Riot that have been applying a franchise model based on esports leagues. So very, very similar to a traditional sport model in NBA, for example. But there are also publishers as Valve that are involved in esports as well, but expressly refuse this model. Then the most important thing here to consider is that there are also a lot of other publishers, which in my opinion is a significant percentage of the publishers, which are still on the fence. And they are deciding which approach will they take going forward. What I'm getting at the fact that the publisher decision and also the decision that the publisher has not taken already, so that he will take, so in the next future, have a direct effect on the esports business. That are not completely foreseeable from where we stand at the moment. So in fact, this can affect all levels of the industry. On one side, if now the level of enforcement of some publisher of the intellectual property right over the product is medium or maybe slow, especially in relation to certain kind of tournaments, for example. So we had tournaments as an example, and it's a great example for this, because certain very small tournaments might be for the publisher in an initial phase a great advertisement and a great way to create an esports community around their own video game. So the fact of not entering the market at the very beginning could be also a strategy in order to actually gain a community, and this can be done from the very ground up. So basically, they are enjoying the fact that there is someone on the territory that is creating these communities, and then also, of course, that they can be unaware of certain tournament and small events. And here I'm talking about small events and tournaments. So this level of industry players will be affected because at the moment they're not negotiating with the publisher, or at least not. And I'm talking about like very small tournament with very few esports players. So not talking about huge tournament where of course they already have a negotiation in place with the publisher. And then they will have to start So if the publisher entered the market and it raised the awareness over the event that are going on, they will have to deal with it. But of course, this also have an effect on big or bigger industry players, because which have a direct link with the publisher and a communication channel open with the publisher, because then when the publisher will enter the industry, they will select some certain player that they want to deal with. So the ability to understand the market and understand your game and the publisher you are working with, to the point where you are able also to predict which will be their next move, is something that will help you, will give you a competitive advantage vis-a-vis your industry competitor, that it's something you should consider. So where I'm going is that not that the publisher is something that can happen anytime soon, and so everyone else should be, but they should be aware. They should be aware and maybe understand the fact that there is no way, the control is theirs, and intellectual property rights is something that are established at an international treaty level. So the intellectual property right over the video game is not something that is going anywhere, but for industry players, they are an interesting connection, and they can also help them going forward when the market is developing. So the bottom line is that these two industries, video games and esports, are inherently linked. So there is no way that one is going in a different direction than the other. And then, of course, I understand that the esports industry in most jurisdictions is facing huge legal issues that need fixing. So when you have the doping problem referred by Domenico, for example, tournament organization, which I only mentioned because, of course, you will have different problems in different jurisdictions, but in Italy, for one, they are a huge gray area where you never know which kind of regulation you may trip in. So you have a gambling issue to solve. You have price competition. So here in Italy, these are the main problems, but they can vary in other jurisdictions. You have problems with the esports player contracts, and so labor problems. So this kind of problem, of course, they need some fixing, and then you cannot rely on the market on finding a solution. So which are the two possible solutions? The two possible solution is go with a governmental approach, and establishing a federation, which is along the line with the sport industry, which will advocate for changes, and maybe.
Sorry for interrupting you. You mean like following more a South Korean approach?
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, in South Korea, this was especially might be justified by the fact that South Korea is a country where esports are well recognized and played and have been played for a long time now. So basically, they had the expertise to cover also this area with somehow governmental organization. But I will come to the problem that came with it. So basically, and then you probably will be able to predict where I'm going with. But then this is one of the approach. The other approach is fix the legal problems. And I mean, meaning that a specific legislation like the one that France had could fix the problem that immediately need fixing, also to allow the industry to grow, and based on, I mean, every legislation could identify its own. For Italy, for example, are the one that we mentioned, and then in consideration of this. The point I'm making is that if you have these two solutions to solve the same problem, but then you you don't have, if you put a governmental organization there, you should be sure that the people in it are able to help fixing the problem that the industry is facing. But most of all, you are putting someone in between the industry and the publisher that you are not sure that the publisher is familiar with. And then, of course, esports, it's not only one sport, it's a lot of sports. So is this organization will be able to negotiate with every publisher in relation to every game, will have the expertise in relation to every game, or won't be better to let the publisher select the very best entity that to negotiate with and to partnership with when it comes to its video game. I mean, and I'm saying this for the purpose of the developing of the industry. So, and then I'm almost done. But what I'm saying here is that if you the esports it's an incredible new and changing and developing industry. So you should be really careful when you put something that is not equally flexible, because it might have a negative impact. And CASPA, as you mentioned, that is the Korean association that was handling esports, found itself engaged in a lawsuit with a major American video game developer, Blizzard, concerning the regulation of intellectual property right over the use of the Blizzard developed video game StarCraft within the Korean esports scene. So the conflict there was related to the issue of broadcasting rights and the derivative work resulting from the video game implementation within the esport context. But then the matter was settled while Blizzard appeared to be not very happy with the outcome of a negotiation with CASPA, which was one of the best governmental entities that could have handled it. Because I mean, the level of awareness it's great in Korea. So the point is this enough? Or the fact of having only one body, even if the people that are handling that body, the governmental body, are really proficient with video games and with several video games, will it be enough to help the development of esports? That's my concern.
Great, Nicoletta. You were very clear. We really enjoyed your intervention, and I must admit that I agree with you in most of the things, and I think that also our other guests agree with us. Let's say like this. So now it's time to move on. We talked about the increasing business of esports. We talked about the differences between esports and traditional sports. We saw how esports club works day by day, how brands are investing in this market. But now we have to consider another perspective, which is the labor one. And so we are going to analyze which are the work agreements are made. And in this sense, I would like to introduce you another Italian lawyer, Luca Viola. Hi, Luca.
Hi, everybody.
I will let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. I'm Luca Viola. I'm a sports and labor lawyer. I'm a founder of L'Expertise Legal Network law firm, and I'm the head of the labor and sports department. And I'm also associate, like Domenico and Fabio, at AIAS, the Italian Sports Association of Lawyers.
Oh, so I think we are all members.
Great.
Italian Sports Lawyers Association. I Just like 2 days ago, I was involved by Dalinda Reitano, who was our guest last week in the commission of the International Sports Law of AIA. So I'm very happy and proud of it. But coming back to our talk, I would like to ask you my first question, which is very, very simple, but I think it's the key to understand the labor related part of esports. So I would like to ask you, which is the contractual relationship between a club and a professional player?
Well, let's talk about the typical structure of a team, actually. The team is made of, I don't know, team manager, coach, mental coach, digital marketing managers, and obviously players and other staff members. Well, all of them at the moment are self-employed. We have to consider that normally teams, clubs prefers not having employees, at least until the structure will grow up to a break-even level. So they are entitled at the moment to invest much in a stable structure and having a more efficient employed structure. So at the moment, actually, all the teams work with self-employment. That the reason is quite easy to understand, because the self-employment in comparison with the employment, the normal employment, has many benefits, and they are very easy to understand. Flexibility, or to pay lower compensation, or not having labor-related costs, also called company costs. As the flexibility is easy to understand, because the teams, the clubs needs to enlarge or reduce the structure depending on the platforms or tournament or titles they are involved in. And also the flexibility grants a higher possibility of turnover, because there are so many players, but not only players, because when we talk about a team, we have to talk about all the other administratives, coach, members. So there is a possibility of change, an easy possibility of changing teams or working in more than one team, because there are not only big and famous teams, but we have also a lot of not professional, small teams. Because from my perspective, from my point of view, we can talk about professional, but we can talk also about amateurs, and we will see after that at this point. From a point of view of costs, the compensation are a very, very important point to understand, because at the moment, for example, in Italy, but it's quite widespread around the world, the absence of collective bargaining agreements in the sector mean that there is no minimum wages. There are no obligation for the teams to pay minimum salaries, minimum wages. So the negotiation between the team and its members is totally free, is related to the commitment required. It can vary a lot between the single member or the importance of the player from one to another. And also, it's possible, for example, with this flexibility, to pay a player or a team member just with prizes win or with a reimbursement of expenses. And from the most important, I think, point of view, the self-employed has no social contribution costs. Because we have to bear in mind that every euro you give to a team member, in case of an employment, in case of employee, you have to double it, because you have to do the same, to give the same to the social contribution, to the taxes. So from this point of view, there are so many benefits in having a structure like this. But there are also some risks that we can analyze after. I would like to tell you also that there are some benefits in having employees from the other party, from another perspective, because employees means stability, means control. So the teams can really manage and organize the time of the employees, can schedule transfers or maybe secondments to other teams, to other realities, to other organizations, can impose collective training periods in gaming houses. Or from a point of view of the control, the team, the employer is really entitled to give orders to control the player business and his sponsorship activities, his personal sponsorship activities. or like in any sports, can impose morality clauses. It's very important, talking about doping, like Domenico did before, or can give other controls on media intellectual properties. Something important to say is that all of these prescriptions are actually put into force even in a self-employed structure. But you have to understand that the more you impose something to a self-employed, the more there is the risk of a legal action against. So what I would like to make you to understand is that the self-employment is the rule right now. But we have to move to another step, because around the world there is a phenomenon that is growing up very, very quickly, and it's called unionization. Unions, are the organization that fight for the employment rights, for the labor rights.
Sure.
And the unionization is very widespread in USA and UK. And it is normal because it means that the market is growing up, that there is money in the market, that the teams are growing up. But it means also that there is a request for more protected work condition, seeking for workplace recognition, and to have protection for other kind of normal employment issues. For example, indemnities, sick pay, holidays, and stuff like that. So even if the market is very young, we are facing a growth with more money every day. And obviously, there is a more stress and more pressure on the players, on the teams, and it means worse condition of as in the workplace.
Sure.
So, considering what we have to go straight to the point, that we have to analyze the risks of an improper classification of employees. This could be an important question that we have to face, and obviously the risk is legal action.
Yeah. I just realized we received a question by Andrea Bozza, and I'm very happy he is following us. And he asked a question who is in a certain way related with the one who I wanted to ask you. So I will go on letting you which is his questions, and then I will tell you which was mine. And so Andrea asked you, and I mean also to Nicoletta if she wants to reply. I mean, it's a general question. Andrea asked us whether by way of association or through legislation, are we waiting for the moment to reach certain threshold of critical mass? In other words, do we need significant numbers before fixing? And so I would like to know which is your opinion about that. And my next question, which is in some way related to this one, was I mean, we are Andrea talks about like critical mass development, and I will also ask you how things will change if the Italian Olympic Committee should one day, hopefully or hopefully not, it depends on the opinions of everyone, if I should recognize esports as sports.
Yeah. Let me say, I see two questions in here, because the first is the critical mass means more attention. Well, we are in the position in which we are very, very close to a critical mass, very close to the moment in which we have to face these problems. And I'm talking about from the point of view of the employment law, because what I was saying before was the risk of the improper classification, and that what is the point? If we don't use the right framework for the labor-related issues, we will have rising of legal action. Legal action about recognition of an employee status. I need, if I'm a player, if I'm a member of the team, maybe I work a lot, maybe I'm in the middle of an outbreak like this of COVID-19, and I have no possibility of having any money like the layoff granted to the employees. So maybe I need to challenge, I need to take an action against my team in order to be recognized as an employee, and having, for example, an high compensation, the difference between what I have received as a payment and what I should receive as the minimum wage provided by the collective bargaining agreements. And more, I should receive the social contribution, the indemnities for sick pay or for holidays or for my health plan or retirement planning. So there are so many interests now on the field that for sure the time of the legal action is going very close and will become bigger every day. This is the first question. For trying to give an answer to the second question, well, I think that the recognition of esports as sport could be the cornerstone for the employment law. Because please consider that if esports will be recognized, the teams could have a different structure. Because nowadays they are profit companies normally, and they're commercial companies. But if the federal regulation or the IOC or the Italian Olympic Committee will recognize some titles as esports, the companies could have a new structure because they could begin amateur sports company or amateur sports association. That means they will be entitled to use the sports contract. And for the employment law point of view, the sports contract is a very unique contract, a very unique agreement, because there is a very special taxation and social contribution scheme applied to it. For example, for a player, for a team member, you have no taxes. You have to pay no taxes until the limit of 10,000 per year. 10,000 is a very small sum if you think, but the fact that there is no taxes at all, it means that you can negotiate it with your team to be more than this. And if you exceed the limit of 10,000, the tax rate is very low. So you have a win-win condition because you have a very small tax application to the player, to the employee, or to the collaborator, and you have no social contribution costs for the employer or amateur sports company. So it's very, very useful for the growth of the market, for the growth of the organizations. The problem is, from the other side, every time you have the opposite side, that without any social contribution, the members, the employees, the players will have no access to social contribution or social helps due to problems like sick or like the outbreak like this. Another important thing is that maybe there arrive a recognition of or inclusion of the esports just partially, because not only the titles will be enclosed under federal regulation. Somebody before says that the sports related titles will be enclosed. Maybe the mobile battle arena or the first person shooting, I don't know, maybe it's difficult, but this is another field. I really hope that esports will be recognized as sport, because this could be the step that could trigger a big growth in the market in Italy. But for sure, related to this, there will be all the problems that normal amateur sports are facing from a labor-related issue with legal action.
Can I add, Lucio? Can I add something to what Luca said to answer Andrea Bozza's question? What I want to say is, Luca covered labor law part. As for example, for tournament organization, I think that the problem is more that we're not everyone not every player is pushing in the same direction. So basically, at the beginning, tournament organizer try to play the sport, play the sport association. I mean, they try to work similarly to a traditional sport kind of entity, and they try to push for that solution. And of course, if you push for that solution, you're not asking for a legal for a law, a legislation that will cover that problem and regulate that problem. Maybe cutting out a space where esport can grow and in tournament organization can grow, because you're actually you're betting on the fact that will be recognized as a sport, and this is not depending on you. So basically, you're betting on a certain model that, I mean, regardless of the fact if it is or not the best model, it's something that is out of your control. I mean, I'm talking for the tournament organizer, because it comes from international from the International Olympic Committee first, and then for the Italian one. So I mean, you're pushing for a model that is not the one, and not the one you can do something to change. So basically, the numbers are there, but then probably every tournament organizer should push in that direction in order to have for a specific legislation, a sui generis legislation that is solving some of the problem. And then, of course, if the recognition comes, that we'll have to a different model, and we'll enter the sport the sports perimeter all of a sudden. But still, if you're not pushing for legislation in the meantime, money are not moving if the legislation is not clear. So people are not investing until the legislation is clear. So if the number you're talking about are viewers, you have them. If the number you're talking about are money, you won't have them until you have a legislation that is clear.
I see. Your point of view is very, very, very interesting, and I would like to extend you a question asked by Mario Tenore. He's a tax lawyer, and that's why he asked something very related to tax. And so I think that Luca partially covered this part, but I will tell you which is the question. Anyone has ever considered the tax consequences related to the development of esports? And suggestions on reading materials are also welcome. Well, before replying, I can tell you, Mario, that there is a very interesting book about esports that I read, which is not so focused on the tax part of esports, but it is very interesting to understand this phenomenon. And it's an Italian book called eSports, un universo dietro il videogioco, which analyzes all the legal problems related to esports. Say that, I don't know if you have some other suggestions for the tax-related things in the esports field.
Well, it's a very complex question, because esports, like every market, is a universe, is an ecosystem. You have so many stakeholders and so many agreements, as many are the stakeholders that play in the field. So, for example, you have publishers, you have sponsors, you have players, you have distributors, you have so many people. So the environment is made of a lot of contracts. And as you know, any contract, any relationships brings with it a tax problem. If you want to talk about employment taxes, we told about it, and we say that there are taxes. The taxes are related to the normal employment environment, the normal employment issues. But if you want to talk about the prices, for example, because this, I think, is the most gray, most important or most strange area that we have to focus on. The prizes won by the players under Italian legislation are considered in a very, very strange way, and there is no clarity on about this could change in case of professionals or in case of sport recognition by the authorities. So this of taxes, I think that need a very focused and spatial talk of Kyle Serrano for another time. It's not so easy to understand. I think that the suggestion of trying to use the book or trying to study or going deeper in what I said about the employment relationship can help our viewers.
Thank you very much, Luca. And according to this, Mario added that his feeling is that on international context, this has nothing to do with amateur sports, at least if he observes this at prize winnings, etc., etc.
No, that's not true, because it's possible from an Italian point of view to be paid with prizes and to be paid even a lot of money. The problem is not that amateur sports is no profit. This is not the problem, because you can earn money. The problem is the tax relation and the social contribution related to the contract. But please consider that there are so many amateurs, for example, volleyball, that really earns a lot of money. So it's not the problem of how much money you earn. The problem is the regulation of professional sport from amateur sports. In Italy, as an example, there are just 4 professional sports. All the other sports are not professional, but it doesn't mean that they have no money for the work they're carrying out.
Yeah. I agree with you.
It's a very complex point of view, and I'm sure that would be very interesting to talk about another time and go deeper.
Yeah, for sure we will do that. I'm so happy that our viewers and our followers are interested in what we are saying, and they asked us questions, and I'm pretty sure they will know much more about the esports field after our talk, because all of you were very interesting and very clear. I have to say that, and I have to thank you. And before finishing our talk, I only would like to ask you one question. As there are a lot of students of the master of other Real Madrid master, and a lot of people who very recently have started to work in our field in the sports law. Which are the tips, the suggestion that you would like to give them in order to succeed in our world? Domenico, we can start with you, and very quickly you can give them some suggestions.
Yeah. So you have to remember a simple rule for me. Sports law is always law. So you need a strong background in private and international law to face sports law. There are so many courses in Italy, in Europe, like ISDE in Madrid, Calle Serrano, hashtag, and FIFA Master or Lucio Colantuoni in Milan. For the rest, work hard and study hard. Be enthusiastic and believe in your dreams.
Something to add, guys?
Be curious, be very curious, and try to follow what you really like to understand, because sports is a very cross expertise, needs cross expertise. So if you like more than one field of the law, go on, be curious and study very hard, because sports is is a word full of satisfaction and curiosity.
And if I can add something, just let many doors open, guys, because you can never know where a chance come from. So work hard and let the doors open.
From my side, I'm not a sport lawyer actually, so basically this is not my background. But if if it's about esports, for example, I think it's developing so fast that the main thing you can do is actually keep updated and read everything that it's happening worldwide. And of course, Italy, in Italy, it's for Italian people it's more difficult. I mean, we have our esports market is growing a little slower than others, but I mean, you have examples from everywhere, and of course you can read, and it's a global kind of business. So basically, everything you read wherever it's will apply sooner or later also to your own market. That's something I'm hoping for.
Thank you, Nicoletta. Thank you all. I really appreciated our talk. I had fun. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did the same. And look forward to continue our talk live, maybe in Milan, and when it will be possible, maybe drinking a beer and enjoying our time together. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I have to thank you once again. It was a pleasure, guys.
Hope to meet you very soon. Bye.
Thank you, Lucio.
See you. Thank you, Lucia.
Bye.